Hey everyone, Tony Iommi's Missing Fingers here, and Black Sabbath. They were a band. There's much discussion as to who exactly created the metal genre, but it is universally agreed that there is no later group that you can assign the originator label to than Black Sabbath. They've been massively influential for the genre. They're one of the biggest bands ever. You've heard Paranoid, you've heard War Pigs, you've heard Iron Man, and of course, who can forget the classic song Black Sabbath by the band Black Sabbath from their album Black Sabbath. However, let's say that the band did not have the most stable history. Constant lineup changes, label mishaps, he said this, he said that, and it's very easy to get very confused looking at it all, especially since in his worst moments, Ozzy Osbourne is more incomprehensible than Joe Biden. Smack dab in the middle is a 10-ish year era that is largely under-discussed. Why is it that way, and why is it just now being discussed again? I'll tell you that in a bit. But first, I gotta speed run through quite a bit of Sabbath history. Okay, so 1968, Tony Iommi, Ozzy Osbourne, Geezer Butler, Bill Ward, they make a band, they call it Black Sabbath. Throughout the 70s, they put out several successful and influential albums. You might have heard of these ones in particular. But towards the end of the 70s, they were in the studio trying to make music again, and Ozzy was like, I don't like it. No, I'm not gonna sing that. And then the rest of the band was like, okay, lol, bye. And they fired him. And then Ozzy was like, I'm gonna make my own solo music now. Into the 80s, we got Ronnie James Dio on vocals. He makes 2 albums with them as the singer, but in 1982, he left the band to do his solo band because it's working very well for Ozzy at the moment. In 1983, they got Ian Gillan from Deep Purple to be the singer. They made an album together, and this is unfortunately the very real cover. This Demon Baby Haunts My Nightmares. That group fell apart pretty much immediately after, with Ian leaving as well as Geezer and Bill leaving. So Tony Iommi is like, damn it, I need a band. And he kind of scrapes up anyone he can find off the streets. Not literally, that is just an exaggeration. Most notably Glenn Hughes, also of Deep Purple, to be the singer. They made an album together. It had very weird marketing. Once again, the singer left the band, this time because he got his face broken, I think. I don't know. And in came Ray Gillan to be the new singer. This guy got a bunch of women killed because he slept with them while knowing that he had HIV, and then those women later died of HIV, just like how he later died of HIV. So I'm not going to talk about him. But finally, part of the main topic of the video has arrived. However long into the video it is now. Tony freaking Martin. That is not the right Tony Martin. That is also not the right Tony Martin. Come on. No, 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 no. Come on, man. Thank you. Get a more original name! Tony Martin would go on to be the second longest running Sabbath singer behind Ozzy. You wouldn't really know that though, unless you really got into the history of Sabbath, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The first album that came out with him as the singer was The Eternal Idol in 1987. This one also had future Kiss drummer Eric Singer on drums, and former Ozzy bassist Bob Daisley on bass. Quite the interesting lineup we have here. Now, I'm going to be upfront and say I haven't really listened to many Sabbath albums in recent years, especially the ones that I'm going to talk about, which doesn't make me really look good right now. However, I have a counterpoint. This is my video and I can do what I want. Shut up. The Eternal Idol marked a return to a more traditional heavy metal sound for the band while also having a ton of grandiosity, especially considering Tony Martin's huge voice. There's also a song in here called The Shining that was based off the movie The Shining. Kind of weird concept, but a cool song nonetheless. There's a cult following for it now, but if we're going to talk about commercial success at the time, Woo! Critics did not like this album. Nobody bought this album. And it got to the point where Warner Brothers basically abandoned the band. So they went and got together with IRS Records. This is important. In 1989, IRS released their first album with Sabbath, Headless Cross. A Sabbath singer stuck around after one album. Shocker, I know. Also, Cozy Powell joined on drums. Cozy Powell, I think, is a very awesome drummer who has also played in bands like Rainbow, Whitesnake, and even Brian May's solo band. And speaking of Brian May, who, if you don't know, is the guitarist of Queen, he actually has a guitar solo on one of the songs in this album, When Death Calls. When Death Calls? When Death Calls. There's only one death. Now, Queen is, in fact, my favorite band, so I'm kind of not the best person to ask objectively about that song. Just the mere idea of Black Sabbath and Queen collaborating is making me kick my feet in the air. This, from what I remember, is definitely my favorite of the Tony Martin albums. Although can't really say the same for the press at the time, because no one even talked about this album. I'm just going to put that as a blanket statement for the entire period I'm going to talk about. Anytime Tony Martin, Black Sabbath shows up, the press is like, Next up, they put out Tear in 1990. IRS Records basically assured that the band could do kind of whatever they wanted with this one. So what did they do with this one, you might be asking? Vikings. Goddamn Vikings. Tony Martin wrote the lyrics for this one, and he was basically like, well, I gotta write the lyrics about something. Although I don't think this album was a pivotal point in the creation of Viking metal. How unfortunate. But alas, Black Sabbath can't be the procreators of every metal subgenre. You're just hogging all the fun at that point. But uh-oh, get ready, it's drama time. Black Sabbath, more like Drama Sabbath. Am I right? Or am I right? Because now Dio wants back in the band. And Tony Iommi, who already has a Black Sabbath to work with ready to go at any point, says, sure, why not? And now the Dio era Black Sabbath is back with Geezer Butler on bass again too. When Tony Martin eventually found out, he was like, okay, I guess. He went off to do a lackluster solo album while the Dio era Black Sabbath made Dehumanizer, and that came out in 1992. Now, this album was released under IRS Records, but it was also re-released under Warner Brothers. This is important. And just when you think the drama couldn't get weirder, Ozzy Osbourne decides he's gonna go on a retirement tour, and he asks Black Sabbath to open for him, because at this point Ozzy's solo career had far surpassed Black Sabbath in relevance. Dio was like, hell no, and he scurried off, which led Black Sabbath doing those shows with, of all people, Rob Halford of Judas Priest on vocals. As a metalhead and a lover of music history, I cannot put into words how weird these pictures look. And after all that shenanigans, Tony Iommi was like, gosh diddly darn it, where did my band go? And then Geezer Butler was like, I'm still over here. And then Tony Martin was like, I am also still over here. Cozy Powell did not have the same sentiments though, because I guess he didn't have notifications on, I don't know. In his place stepped in Bobby, however you pronounce that last name, and IRS later released Cross Purposes in 1994. This one is the least notable for me personally. It's dark, it's melodic, it's heavy, it's a Tony Martin Black Sabbath album that does also have a Stolen Scorpions cover. That was an interesting move. This is the only Tony Martin album that also had Geezer Butler on bass, which is pretty cool. But one exceptionally notable thing about this album is that from the tour for this, they produced the video and live album Cross Purposes Live. And I say this is exceptionally notable because I actually have a physical copy of this. This was given to me by my dad for Christmas. Thank you, Daddy. I'm not exactly sure how legal this is, especially since this looks nothing like the official art. Also, this is a DVD video, and DVD videos weren't really around much back then. Needless to say, this is one of the most interesting musical items that I own. Later on, Cozy Powell did rejoin the band. Hooray! And in 1995, IRS put out Forbidden. This one is often regarded by the people that know of its existence as the worst Black Sabbath album. This in large part thanks to the muddy production by Ernie C., which I don't know anything about Body Count. I don't listen to Body Count, so I can't really attest to how the production works on those albums. But it did not work the best on this one. There was also quite a bit of stylistic inconsistencies, such as with, coincidentally, another member of Body Count, Ice-T has a verse on the opening track, Illusion of Power. It is a song. So yeah, most people don't really like this album. Do I think it's the worst Black Sabbath album? Again, I haven't really listened to a lot of these Sabbath albums recently, so I can't really say for certain. What I can say, though, is that the Born Again Baby is in fact my sleep paralysis demon. And that is the last of the Tony Martin era Black Sabbath albums. After that, there was reunions with Ozzy, and then they went back to Dio until he unfortunately died, and then right back to Ozzy until they officially dismantled the band in 2017. As for the IRS Tony Martin albums, they have been left largely ignored and forgotten about. Why is that? Number one, no one really cares. I mentioned before that no one really cared at the time to pay attention to the Tony Martin albums, so why would many people care to pay more attention afterwards? Number two, Wizard of Oz, Ozzy Osbourne. When Ozzy got his grummy little hands back on the Black Sabbath name, the brand almost entirely focused on Ozzy-era Black Sabbath releases. Even when they do acknowledge other eras of Black Sabbath, they leave out entirely the IRS Records albums that weren't re-released. And that is in large part to number three, Legal Nonsense. The label folded in 1996, the year after Forbidden came out. So you can tell how that would ensue a whole bunch of blur, in that they weren't even able to re-release the IRS albums in the first place until 2024. Yes, folks, there is a happy ending to all this, because as of yesterday, as of the release of this video, not the recording, the IRS-era Tony Martin Black Sabbath albums have been re-released as a box set for the first time. Box set is called A New Domini, 1989 through 1995. It includes Headless Cross, Tear, Cross Purposes, and Forbidden. And this re-release means you can officially buy the albums again as this box set, and for the first time ever, listen to these songs officially on streaming services. Took them 30 years to figure it out, but hey, they figured it out eventually. Fun thing about Forbidden on this box set, though, is that it is actually a complete remix of Forbidden that is on this box set. A remix done by Tony Iommi himself to sound more like Black Sabbath, as he says. Now, I haven't heard this remix myself, but considering that Tony Iommi is the only person to appear on every single Black Sabbath album, I have a sneaking suspicion that he kind of knows what Black Sabbath sounds like. And that's all I have to say for now. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Talking about this box set has gotten me really excited to listen to it, which makes me really upset right now because I am recording this Tuesday night, and the box set comes out on Friday. Don't do too many videos like this, so if you did like this video, share with a friend, family, or anyone else. Stay tuned for more videos, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!